Hi, friends. Good morning. Before we do anything else, I feel compelled to say that when my dear friend Martha Christian said, "Feed the little monsters," she was not referring to the children of Broadway. She was, in fact, referring to the receptacles outside the worship venues that we have decorated to look like little monsters. So, just in case this was your first time here, and you were like, what kind of church have I stepped into? Know that we love children and students, and in fact, we're not referring to them. So, yeah, just to clarify, we're on a team here. So, yeah. But hi, my name is Jason Brown, and I'm really blessed to be with you this morning. I am typically with our 6th through 12th grade students in their worship service, where somebody asked me before, some of them asked me before I came in here, I made sure to go see them, and they said, listen, are you nervous? Are you nervous about speaking to the adults? And I said, no, listen, they're a lot easier than y'all. When things don't go well with y'all don't hesitate to say, this is boring. At least the adults will not yell that, so we're a little ahead of the game. If we haven't yet met, I have had the great privilege to serve on staff here for 17 years. This is my family. I love them a whole lot, and that is my friend's 2 cats short of a perfect photo. That is my son, Stockton. I don't know if that's your left, if you say it's on the left or the right, but nevertheless, there's my son Stockton. He will be 17, which is incredibly hard to believe for me. Not too long, about a month from now. In the middle is my wife Dana. She works at Bowling Green Junior High. So sometimes I joke that we're actually both youth ministers. She ministers at school and I minister at church, and sometimes the two overlap. Next to me there is my daughter Evangeline, who is a freshman at Bowling Green High School, who I love a lot, who went to her first haunted house last night and came home, and I said, well, how was it? And she said, I don't think haunted houses are for me. So me neither. So she gets it honest. I do want you to know that I want you to feel like you are in good hands with Adam gone today. So if it's okay with you, I just want to give you sort of some of my credentials, some of my resume. And particularly, if you are with the group that's responsible for the 40 under 40 in Bowling Green, you're too late. I'm 42. However, why are you laughing? That's not funny. However, if you're with the 50 under 50 people, let's talk afterwards. But here we go. In the 3rd grade at Auburndale Elementary School in Louisville, Kentucky, I won the school spelling bee. It was, thank you. Wow, you don't have to clap. That's okay. Come on, you don't have to do all that. But it was a great moment. I felt great. I got to be the line leader all day. I got to go first at lunch, get that delicious rectangle pizza before anybody else. I got an extra helping of corn on the side. It was a great day. In the 4th grade, I was the runner-up in the Auburndale Elementary School spelling bee. And I know what you're wondering. What was the word? And I'm sad to tell you, I've never forgotten it. And every time I see it, I am re-triggered because somebody else got rectangle pizza ahead of me that day. A lot of people, in fact. But the word was gist. Do you know this word? Do you know how to spell it? How do you spell it? Go. Well, congratulations to you, all right? Yeah, good for you. Good job. You could have won, unlike me. I'm not bitter, though. I'm not. But every time I see it, I'm like, oh, that's that word again. Yeah. In the 5th grade, I'm happy to report to you that I was named the Young American, I'll make sure I get this right, the Young American Bowling Alliance Bowler of the Year for Ken Bowl. I hear some of you laughing. Rabbi, come on. This is a major award, people, all right? In the south end of Louisville, Kentucky, there's a lot of good bowlers. I just want to throw that out there. Yeah, and honestly, it was downhill from there. So there we go. Here we are in 2024. But full confession, I have those awards, and frankly, like every award, including like perfect attendance, in this box, in like this giant Tupperware box tub in my attic. It's like my very own little tub of greatness. And I don't know if you have a tub of greatness, but my parents started my tub of greatness, and occasionally, like when I'm feeling sad, I will climb up in the attic, pull out my tub of greatness, go through all of the all of the clippings and things in the tub of greatness, because, listen, full confession here, right? And maybe you would join me in this confession. I think we all want to be great. Like I think we all, there's something in us that wants to be great. And maybe like it sounds different for you. Maybe it's something like, I want to matter. I want to have success. I want to be comfortable. But really, like it all goes into the same tub, right? Each one of us has within us this temptation, this desire to be great, to be a great spouse, to be a great parent, to be a great employee, to be a great boss, to be a great athlete, to be a great friend, to be a great crossword puzzler, like whatever it is, there's this idea that like whatever you do, whatever you are, you got to be great. And if you can't be great, then listen, like we'll settle for the appearance of great, right? Like we'll settle for the pretense of perfection. So maybe we'll dress a certain way or act a certain way or be with certain people or don't do certain things or do certain things or whatever it is. Like if we can't be great, and listen, like there are limitations to being a human, right? We know that, you know that. But if we can't be great, if we can't be successful, then at least we can pretend really well. I recognize that in me. I recognize that as a human being. And so that's why I have a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy for James and John when they ask Jesus this question. Let me set this up just a little bit for you. Like we're in this series called The Dust of the Rabbi. And essentially like what this amounts to is the underlying question of all of that is how do we be like Jesus? Like how do we follow him so closely that his steps become our steps, his ways become our ways, his life becomes our life. And there are people who quite literally followed him step by step in Scripture. These are the disciples. And there were 12 disciples, you know this. And you probably know also that like within the 12, there was like a smaller little group. That group was Jesus and Peter and James and John. And so James and John had, maybe they had like some inside jokes with Jesus that none of the other 12 had. Maybe they had like experiences with Jesus that none of the other 12 had. Maybe like there was a sense of, we're closer to Jesus than the rest of you. And maybe that's where this question comes from. Maybe that sort of gave James and John, at least in their minds, permission to kind of pull Jesus aside, right? Because this is a question that doesn't happen in the context of the whole group, right? This is not a question that James and John ask Jesus in front of everybody else. This is James and John pulling Jesus aside, kind of like in a conspiratorial way, kind of in like a We know maybe we shouldn't ask this in front of everybody else way. Kind of in like, we know this isn't appropriate to ask in front of everybody else, but they ask it nevertheless. This is Mark chapter 10, verse 35. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Essentially, like, there's a little bit of manipulation here, maybe. Like, hey, just say yes. Like, just go ahead and say yes. And, like, we'll get to the question later, but, like, we want you to do something for us. It's maybe a little bit of, like, strong-arming, maybe a little bit of, Jesus, like, here's our agenda item. And absolutely, 100%, God says to us, God allows us, God invites us to come to him and say, this is where we're at, this is what we're struggling with, this is what we want you to do. This is kind of what we hope happens. But I don't think that's what this is. I think instead, because they've pulled Jesus aside, because of the nature of their request, which you will see, what's really happening here is it's kind of sneaky. It's kind of sneaky. Here's what they say. Jesus says to them, what do you want me to do for you? They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. Now, listen, like, this could be like James and John just saying, like, hey, next time we eat, next time we gather around the table, like, let us sit next to you. But the fact that they add in your glory, doxa, the word glory, where we get doxology, there's something else happening here, right? They're not asking for seating arrangements at supper. What they're instead asking for is, hey, Jesus, like, we recognize that you are the king. We recognize that you have power. We recognize that you perhaps are the Messiah, the one who is going to rule over the world in their mind. And so, hey, like, when you do that, let us do that with you. Essentially, make us great. We recognize you're great, and we don't want to step on your greatness. Like, you can still sit in the middle, but make us great. Make us great. I know you feel the temptation to be great, and you would not be alone. In fact, like, this temptation, the temptation for quote-unquote greatness, and just like, listen, every time we say greatness, just picture the air quotes in your mind, because the greatness that the disciples are talking about here and the greatness that Jesus invites us to, those are two separate things. And maybe the way that you have defined greatness, or maybe the pressure that you feel to be great, are two separate things. So every time we say greatness, like, just take this with a grain of salt. But this idea, the temptation for greatness, listen, like, it is a thing that haunts these pages. And let's take it a next step. It's a thing that, like, haunts us. At the very beginning of all things, there is a moment where the serpent comes to Adam and Eve. This is in Genesis 3. Everything is created good in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Everything is great and perfect and wonderful and just how God intended for it to be, until the temptation for greatness. This is chapter 3, beginning in verse 4. The serpent says to the woman, you will not surely die, the serpent said to the woman. Verse 5, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. And here's the phrase, catch this, and you will be like God, that you will be great. The temptation is not, it's bigger than just taking a bite out of a piece of fruit. The temptation is greatness. You can go a little further. This is Genesis 11. This is the Tower of Babel. You probably know this story, but this is Genesis 11, verse 3. They said to each other, the folks said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks. Let's bake them thoroughly. Let's make sure they're good bricks." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. And then listen to this, verse 4. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves, so that we would be great." The temptation for greatness is not something that just started with us in 2024. This temptation haunts us. It haunts you, it haunts me, it haunts our story from the very beginning. And so when James and John come to Jesus and they say, "Make us great, make us great," they are living into the same temptation that echoes our lives and this life. And what about the pressure that comes with that temptation? Like, I don't know if you have ever felt the stress of greatness, the stress that you don't have permission to struggle, the stress that you don't have permission to fail, the stress that at every moment, at every turn, you have to be 100 out of 100, and if you ever fail at all in any kind of way, whether big or small, then you are, in essence, a failure. I don't know if you have felt that, but hear me when I say that our students, they absolutely do. They absolutely do. Listen, they feel the tension of you got to get great grades to figure out what happens next after high school, and whatever that is, it needs to be a great job or it needs to be a great school. And it would be helpful if you got a great scholarship to make that happen. And once you had these pieces of greatness in place, you can have a great life with great wages, with a great house and a great car. But oh, by the way, like, you have to be great in the process, because if you slip up in the process, if you slip on the stairway to success, then you have failed. And so is it any wonder that James and John come to Jesus and they say, "Make us great. We don't want the stress of the staircase to success. Let us get on the elevator. Let us get on the elevator with you. Take us to the top. Let us sit next to you on your right and your left, and you can be great, and we will be great as well." What James and John are saying is not about college. It's not about career. Essentially, what they are doing is they see, living in the Roman Empire, they recognize the power structures that exist. They recognize that there is a ruler, and underneath the ruler there are governors, and that ruler and those governors, they govern areas and they govern people. Those governors have control over the land, and those governors have control over the people. And so what James and John are asking for, essentially, is control. They're asking for power. They are asking for you, if you were a governor or an emperor, you got rich. They're asking for profit. They're asking to be known well and well known. They're asking for prestige. They're asking for power, for profit, for prestige. There's a lot that goes into this request, which is why they've pulled Jesus aside to make the request. They're asking for a very specific thing in a very specific power structure, and they're asking to take the Jesus elevator to get there. And how often, listen, full confession, how often do we say to God, "Hey, this is what I want. This is what it can look like. I can just go ahead and tell you, Jesus, this is what it can look like. Just so you know how to fulfill this particular prayer, let me inform you what I want here and how I want you to do it, and I'll just sit back and let you do it." James and John are asking for something entirely different than what Jesus is offering. Essentially, what Jesus responds to them with is, "You missed the gist." There's the word again. You missed the gist. Jesus responds to them, "You don't know what you are asking." And Jesus is correct. because what they're asking for is essentially a Roman power structure that is built on control, that is built on fear, that is built on intimidation, that is built on one person getting their way. Jesus rejects that, pushes that back against them and says, you don't know what you're asking for. Jesus continues, can you drink the cup that I drink, or can you be baptized with the baptism that I will be baptized with? James and John respond, we can. Jesus says to them, you will drink the cup that I drink. You will be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. And listen, we know this because we know the rest of the story. But there's incredible irony in what Jesus is responding to James and John. And I wonder, ultimately, did James and John get that? Did they see the irony of their request and its fulfillment or lack thereof when James and John saw Jesus on the cross? Because when Jesus was on the cross, there was someone on his left and there was someone on his right, but it was not a position of prestige. It was not a position of profit. It was absolutely not a position of power. It was a place of shame. It was a place of embarrassment. It was not a place of control, but an utter lack of control. There absolutely was someone that sat on Jesus' left and someone that sat on Jesus' right, but it wasn't what James and John asked for. It wasn't what James and John intended for it to be. And Jesus kind of previews that. He continues. He follows up with this. Those places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. Verse 41, when the other 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Essentially, if you've ever been in a group where some people broke off and made different plans outside of the rest of the group, you have felt this. You have felt the indignation. You have felt the, why are you stepping out of the group? We were all in this together until you stepped out of the group. And I picture, this is just Jason talking, this is not scripture, but I picture they started to argue over who actually should sit at the left and the right. Maybe they started yelling over each other their particular resumes. Hey, I didn't lose the spelling bee in the 4th grade, so I should actually be at the left, and maybe somebody else at the right. I don't know, I don't care, but I know where I should be based on my own level of greatness. But Jesus interrupts their indignation because their indignation is still based on this Roman power structure. This power structure of control and profit and prestige. And Jesus flips the script. This is what he says. Jesus called them together, verse 42, Jesus called them together and says, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. This is the power and the prestige, right? And their high officials exercise authority over them. Verse 43, not so with you. Just cuts through the argument, cuts through the indignation. Essentially, your goal is wrong. This is not who you are. This is not who I am. This is Jesus saying this. This is not what this is about. And for them, for not just James and John, but for the entirety of the disciples, this would have been an incredible shift and a difficult shift. Let me keep going so you see why. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Essentially, whoever wants to rule over you should actually be at the bottom. Whoever wants to be at the top, you need to go to the bottom. This would have been incredibly mind-shifting for them. They would have struggled to understand this because everything in life for them would have been about climbing the staircase of success. My friends, listen, we're there too. we're there too. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be a slave or servant of all. He told the 12 who were arguing about who gets to be here that in reality, the call of God, the call of Jesus, is not a staircase to success, but instead it's a descent of discipleship. It's not about success. It's not about greatness. It's about faithfulness. The one who serves. Jesus continues, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. This is the moment where Jesus explicitly rejects the temptation for greatness that you and I feel and that haunts these pages. This is the moment where Jesus says, no, this is really what it's about. This is the moment. Let me try to bottom line that for you. It's not about power. It's not about how much power we can accumulate. It's not about how much area we can control or how many people we can control. Instead, it's about the people that we can love, the people that we can serve. It's not about controlling them or manipulating them or strong-arming them. Instead, it's about serving them. How do we serve the people that God puts us in front of? Second, it's not about profit. It's not about profit. It's not about squeezing every nickel and dime out of life, but instead it's about purpose. It's about purpose. It's recognizing that each one of you in this room has unique skills, unique talents, unique experiences that bring to bear something great. Not great that puts money in your wallet or money in your bank account, but money that changes the world, that builds God's kingdom on earth. It's not about profit, but purpose. It's not about cultivating an empire, but about cultivating empathy. And the last one, it's not about prestige. It's not about looking good. It's not about how good we can look, but instead it's about passion. Who needs us? Who is suffering? And how can we come alongside them, even if it means we suffer with them? Even if it means we suffer with them. When Jesus gives the disciples the example of the baptism that he'll be baptized with, of the cup that he will drink, and invites us to drink as well, he's not talking about positions of power or prestige or profit. Instead, he's talking about being a servant to all. He's talking about how do we cultivate empathy with one another and with the people around us. It's not working to make ourselves shine, but instead, are we willing to suffer? Are we willing to suffer with people that we love? I recognize what I love about Jesus is that he doesn't just leave us on our own, right? He doesn't just say like, well, good luck. Instead, he sends his Holy Spirit on us, and he invites us into full fellowship with him. And when the disciples came to him and they were like, hey, we want to do this, but we don't know how, Jesus says, let me show you how. And he gives them this prayer, which we will pray together in just a moment. We call it the Lord's Prayer. And I know you've said this before, right? But I hope today, as you think about the request of James and John, as you think about James and John saying, this is our will, Jesus, you'll hear the Lord's Prayer in a new way, in a different way. Not our will, but yours. Not our success, but yours. Not what we want, but Jesus, what you do. So you'll see this on the screen. I invite you to say this with me. Let's say this together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.